today is going to be kind of quick workshop just to give you an insight of what you might need to complete your Handover. So most likely next week you're going to spend some hours completing all the documentation you will need. So I split this in two parts. Probably some of you are working on the code and some on the project. So will be just one Handover. But as for clarification, I will tell you what you need for the code part and what for the project. So let's start with the code part. Okay, start from today, planning time and persons to allocate to the Handover. It will take some time, so it's not something that you can do in one day. And so the first thing we need will be the documentation for the code. Then you need to spend some time with the, I don't know what team you are. You're 764, 782? 764. Any 782? No? All right. So if in your team there are students, senior students 782, make sure that they will help you to go through the code. And also allocate some time to do pair programming, meaning I'm going to explain what it is, and also at the end, a full code review before you do the final Handover. Now, starting with the documentation. So the most important part is a list of the team members, their role, and very important, the contact details, because next trimester some student is gonna rotate out, so you want them you might need to reach them out, so you want their contact, make sure that everybody's got the contact details on the documentation. Also a list of the technology stack you've been used so far, and also describe why you've chosen this stack. Also description of the development process you're activating now, and for example, if you're implementing features, explain why you are implementing this feature and how you implement it. Very important, a link to the source code. So if you got a Bitbucket, a GitHub repo, make sure that it's clear what it is. And if it's private, make sure that it's written how to access to it or make it public. Also explain how the source code is backed up, how to restore it, and if there are change logs, make sure they are included in the list. Very important, installation guide, because person that will come on board next trimester, they might not know how to install it, so make sure there is a clear documentation on how to install the system.
Okay, and when it comes to installation part, like for certain technologies, there are other prerequisites, so do we need to mention the installation process of the prerequisites as well?
Yes, make sure that you have a very strict line of how to process for the installations, like very detailed, please. That might be included in your repo as well.
Okay, so do we mention these things in the presentation, or these things should go in the documentation, right?
This is documentation, this is not for the presentation.
Okay. And you said that to put the contact details of the team members, do you want those to go in the presentation or the documentation?
You might have a list of the members in the presentation, just like at the end of the presentation, just to show who is working on the team. But all the details and contacts should just go in the Handover documentation. So if before you finish the Handover there are still some bugs or defects in your code, make sure you list them. And if during this trimester you encounter some problem, could be like, I don't know, database failure or a major crash, have a list of this and make sure they're in the Handover as well. Now, as I say, the new team members sometimes should be allocated to make sure that probably all of you are 764, make sure that all of you can compile, run, test, and deploy the code. So you should at least have basic knowledge of how to do these tasks, even if not in deep, but at least you should know how to compile, run, and test and deploy. Because next trimester you will have new students come on board, you should teach them how to execute these things.
So going further in next trimester, as we are doing 7.6 for now, will we be working in terms of doing the final delivery of the current project that we're working?
Well, it depends upon the project. Most likely, you will be assigned to the same project, and so most likely you will be the senior students next trimester. And it depends upon the project. Some projects might finish this trimester, but they are all long-term projects, so it's not going to happen probably. Okay. Next, make sure that you go through the code with the senior students. Make sure that you are familiar with the code. Make sure that all the information is easy to find. Yes?
But new members we're not going to have soon, right? New members will be...
So it depends about the project, because several projects at this point has got like a kind of mixed team. So they have like senior students and junior students. So I'm talking on behalf of all these teams.
New members means C1 students.
Yes. Yeah, I call it new members, but yeah, C1, just to don't confuse, just 764 or C1. Pair programming. So I will suggest to allocate 1 or 2 hours next week where 2 persons work together on the code using just one machine. One person will write lines of code and the other person will check behind him, and then you just swap the role. This is very helpful to have a deep understanding of how the code is working. And if maybe some student might have some lack of knowledge, it might help him to integrate this knowledge.
Learning over the shoulder.
Yes.
On-job training.
Yeah, we call that pair programming or peer programming.
What if the squad does not have senior students?
Sorry?
What if the squad does not have senior
Oh, well, probably some of the students on your team will have more expertise, or if not, just work together anyway to kind of help each other. Commenting the code, it's very important. And this because not just because new students will work with your code, but also because you're going to have a kind of break. And then when you're going to pick up, you want to be sure to remember what you were doing. I'll tell you now, after 2 or 3 weeks, you're not going to remember what you were doing if you have no comments. So it will take you time to recover. If you have clear comments, it will make this task much easier. So make sure that not all the code, but at least the part that can be a little bit more hard to understand are commented. And that means also that you don't want to over-comment your code. Otherwise, it's going to be flooded with just comments and make it harder to read. Make sure that the code is clear enough to be self-explanatory. So yes, clarification comments for yourself, it's good. And make sure that all the comments follow kind of standards, so don't change maybe, I don't know, fonts or way to write your comments.
So all the codes which is there in the application, those needs to be copy pasted in the document as well? In this document?
The code?
Yeah.
The comment will have is repo. It's repo, so it should be in the documentation. It should be just in the repo. You will have just a link for the source code. I did it about the code Handover. Now, talking about a more general project Handover, still allocate some time to manage your team and to allocate tasks to each member. Start with the project descriptions and where to find it. Make sure that it's very detailed about the project. Include the roadmap of the project at what point you finished and probably where you see the project will go next. Include diagrams, include frameworks, any skeleton design that you have, and explain it. Tools, whatever tools you've been using so far for the project. It might be like a Trello's board, can be GitHub. Make sure that you list all the tools you've been using and the way to access it. As well for the code, because some team might have people not working on the code, but working just on other parts of the project, make sure that the roles and contact are in there. And for the person they are coming from already ongoing project, they might have contact of previous students. Make sure to contact them to ask them if it's fine that this contact will be staying in the project as well. So, for the project Handover, make sure that you have a list of what you achieved, what was delivered to the client, what you agreed with the customer or client. Also, if you had some issues with the client or customer, make sure that explain in the handover, and if you solve it, also explain how you solve it. You might already think what's going to happen if probably your code is not good enough, or if the project is not good enough, you might encounter some problems. So if you're forecasting this kind of problem, could be scalability, security, list this as well. And if at the end of the project some parts are still not clear, make sure that are listed as well what part is not clear. Next week, being last week or second last week, make sure you clear all the tasks. If the tasks are not being clear, it goes in backlog, and make sure they are documented as well. And it was about the handovers. Now, some of you, I think most of you, will showcase the project. We'll have presentations on the 3rd of October. I don't have all the details. You might want to ask this to your unit chair, but time frame will allocate to present your project. I can give you some tips on how the presentation should be. So the first thing, make sure that it's got easy structures. So if you're presenting with slides, don't use too many slides. 10 or 15 slides should be enough to cover your presentation. The introduction is the most important part of your presentation. Is where you kind of engage the most with the people that are listening to you. So make sure it's clear, make sure that it's engaging. Start explaining the problem that you find, and then the solution that you find and you integrate it in your project. Use stories. Stories make the presentation much easier to follow, to understand. Charts. Don't overflow with too many data, but some graph, some diagrams might help the presentation. Try to be as synthetic as you can. And before presentation, rehearse a lot. And try to don't memorize everything. Try to have just kind of a list of things that you know you want to